Hello everyone, Peter's here and so are the things that I like. Today, finally, I will take you for our second part of our holiday in Israel to Jerusalem. So, let's go for it. For the second part of our Israel stay, we moved to Jerusalem for 4.5 days. But for the Jerusalem itself, we had only 1 day to explore, so we had to pack quite a few things all together. So right off the bat, we started early in the morning with Machne Yehuda Market. And now I have to tell you, because I had an issue with my battery in my camera, unfortunately for the rest of the holiday, for better or worse, I had to record everything on my cell phone. So all the footage that you will see from Jerusalem and other places was actually recorded on my iPhone XS Max. Machne Yehuda Market is a fairly big place. It looks like quite a few streets crumbled together, but they all have a sort of like a glass roofing, which is quite beneficial because it doesn't matter the weather outside, you will be able to visit it any time of the year under any weather conditions. Now, I want you to know one thing right from the very beginning. If you visit the market in the early hours of the day, as we did, you will probably realize that it is just another food market that is not so different from those, I don't know, in London, New York, Dubai, Morocco, pretty much all over the world. It's a nice food market with lots of food from all over the world. And if that's what you seek, then it's great, you will enjoy it. But the negative is you won't experience the Machne Yehuda market in a way that has a meaning for the locals. In order to do that, you need to stop by there in the evening hours, and the best time is probably the Thursday afternoon or evening, or the Friday afternoon and evening. And the reason for it is that in those times, the Machne Yehuda market will turn into something like a social hub. So you will get plenty of locals eating and drinking and singing and dancing and enjoying themselves in a sociable manner rather than shopping manner. From Machne Yehuda market, we will be heading now towards the Jaffa Gate of Old City of Jerusalem. Now there is few bits and pieces that are worth of visiting and stopping by and just look around. But one of the points that I want to talk about now is the Davidka Square, which is fairly interesting point, like a meeting point, and especially the Abraham Hostel that you can find on it. Now there is plenty of hostels and hotels that will be recommended to you for a variety of reasons, and in many ways they might be better than the Abraham Hostel, but the important point about the Abraham Hostel is it's fairly affordable and highly recommended place to stay for pretty much any traveler, and especially the tours that they are able to provide for you are amazing, worth of the money. And as you will see in the later videos, the reputation is more than justified. So once you reach the old Jaffa Gate, you will be entering the city. Now passing through the gate is fairly magnificent. It's like passing the same gate that millions of people were passing before you more than 2000 years. And that can make you feel a little emotional. Once you pass the gate, you will appear on a small square. Now this is a great meeting point. So if any time of the day you will get lost from your group, or you get separated from your friends or anything, you can always easily meet up on this point, because pretty much all the signs all over the city will be able to navigate you down here to this square. Now we will start on the right side from the gate, and you will see the Tower of David. Now before we'll go there, one more thing that you need to understand, that the old city of Jerusalem has a quarters: Armenian quarter, Christian quarter, Muslim quarter, and Jewish quarter, and in this order we will be discovering them today. So as you're passing to see the Tower of David, you are actually entering the Armenian quarter. Now here is the funny fact: I am no super educated person in religion or Jerusalem or anything, but with that little knowledge that I have, I've actually never heard about Armenians in Jerusalem before. I've heard about Jewish and Muslims and Christians and all the blood-shredding history and everything, but never about Armenians. And the fact that they managed to be there alongside all the three groups for those 2000 years-ish and survived all those conquered times and rebellions, riots and bloodsheds and disputes and everything without actually being like mentioned in any general knowledge that I've come across. It's quite interesting, and to be honest, even people who are highly educated still don't know how Armenians managed to do that, and we will get to it later on. But for now, let's discover the Tower of David. So it's a fairly interesting point. Lots of people can easily miss it, so don't do the same mistake. Head straight in there. There is a museum, so if you wish to spend some time and money over there, go ahead. Now I will take you for a little short tour over the Armenian streets. So right now we are exploring the Armenian Quarter. So once you had enough of scouting the Armenian Quarter and its markets and narrow streets, there is one church that I want you to find, and that's the church called Christ Church. Now for me, this church had no special meaning over the other ones. For me it was just another church. But there is a small museum, and inside the museum is one tour guide who is actually amazing. The knowledge that this guy has is beyond real. So now I will show you a short interview that I made with this guy. It's got like 7 minutes. So if you're interested in the Jerusalem history, and if you manage to find him, definitely ask him as many questions you can, because he's totally free. You don't have to pay anything, and as I said, the knowledge that he has is just beyond amazing.
140 years ago, there was only a few thousand Jews in the land of Israel. And the land of Israel was completely dead, except for the old city. Now, how do we know that? I'm a Jew. If you ask me, I'm prejudiced. You can't ask me. If you ask an Arab, they're going to tell you they've been here forever. If you ask a Christian, they have no idea what they're talking about. What does the Word of God say that He's going to do with the physical land of Israel until He brings His people back? Over and over and over, He says two words. He's going to make the physical land desolate and barren. But nobody wants to listen to the Bible. We need someone who's not a Jew, not an Arab, not a Christian, a self-professed heathen. Do you know who this person is? He's from Missouri in the United States. His name is Mark Twain. You ever heard of Mark Twain?
Yeah.
In the year 1867, Mark Twain is a young man. He's innocent, and he's going to travel abroad with a bunch of rich people. The book is called Innocents Abroad. These rich people hire a young journalist who's a partier, a heathen, self-professed, to travel around the world with him. He's innocent, he's going to go abroad. They're on a really big cruise ship. They go all over the world, and they're in Greece. And they're like, let's go check out this silly Holy Land. They want to bring their ship into the port of Haifa or Jaffa, but they can't because the ports are dead. Can't get their boat in. They park it up in Lebanon. They hire all the locals. They're in a caravan. Donkeys, camels, and horses, and on the ground. And for a couple of months or less than, they travel from Syria to Egypt to Jordan. They see the entire land of Israel, everything. Mark Twain will tell you in 2 chapters out of that book, talking about the Holy Land, guess what 2 words he uses to describe the land? Desolate and barren, all right? More importantly, what he says is they travel for 30 miles each day, and they don't see any people. There's no people out there. He speaks of 2 Bedouin groups. They entertain him, they party with him. A small remnant of Jew is in Haifa and Safad, which is up north, the Safad is. Now, that was 140 years ago. Have you seen Israel? Well, when you go travel around Israel today, it's the 8th strongest nation in the world according to the World Critiques. We went from a few thousand Jews to 7 million plus in 140 years. Now, where was the Jew at 200 years ago? We were dispersed all over the world, and we were smaller than after Hitler killed 6 million of us. The concept of the Jew coming back together when they're in 70 different nations, 70 different languages, no money, no land, no cohesiveness whatsoever, that is impossible. It can never happen. God said he would do it over and over and over, and I see it, therefore I know it, because I know what the facts are. Now, what about the Arabs? So, who controlled Jerusalem between 1517 and 1917? The Ottoman Empire did. And who's the Ottoman Empire? Turks.
Okay.
What language do Turks speak?
Turkish.
Why don't they speak Arabic? Because they're not Arabs. It's a different country. We're about to have a world crisis because Khashoggi, a Saudi Arabian, is killed in the Turkish embassy, where the world is about to fight over this, right? Those two people groups, different ethnicity, completely different language, they cannot understand each other at all, and different theology underneath Islam, have always been fighting. They're still fighting to this very day. And Turkey controlled all the Levant for 400 years. The Turks will clearly tell you there was no Arabs here because they wouldn't let them be here. They don't start coming in until the late 1800s once the Jews come back and pay exorbitant prices for the land. They come to work, then the Brits bring them in, and then the Germans go connect with them for the World Wars. That's how they get here. If you don't believe it, go read Mark Twain's book. And if you don't like him, because when you Google it, it's going to go, oh, this is taken out of context, his lies. There's a lady named Joan Peters. She's hired in 1984 by Jimmy Carter. He was an American president. Now, being the lover of Israel that he was not, he hires Joan Peter on purpose to counteract the statements by Mark Twain in his chapters. She's given a big book contract. 6 months later, she gave the money back. A year later, she doesn't work for Jimmy Carter. Her book is called Time Immemorial. I think she gets the crucifixion spot right. If that's the case, the burial can't be there. It's got to be somewhere close by. And the tombs we're looking for are everywhere in Jerusalem.
The whole Jerusalem is pretty much one big tomb.
Yeah. Except for, here's one thing to keep in mind. The general rule was that you don't bury Jews inside the city. There's an exception of that. The kings and their families in the city of David, we find the tombs. But those are extremely rich people. If you go hiking all down through here, you're going to find lots and lots of tombs down there. Extremely super cool big tombs. These two things, they're like pyramids. You'll see them. Can't miss them.
It would make a sense, like, because Jesus Christ was like a simple man.
Yep.
From the poor background. He didn't want any rich, he didn't want any money.
Right.
So I don't think they would build him like a rich tomb.
No, but he didn't. Joseph of Arimathea was a rich Jew who built a tomb for himself years before he knew he was going to be crucified. It was for him and his family. It was brand new. And then once he's crucified, evidently he was a believer. He goes to Pontius Pilatus and asks for permission to get the body, and he puts the body in his tomb. The tomb was not built for Yeshua. It was built for Joseph himself and his family. As circumstances turned out, he's the one who goes and gets. And it's in all these little things. When you read the scripture and start to look at the archaeology, everything in the book fits. Over and over and over. After coincidence number 50, when do you stop saying it's a coincidence? My bookie would not even give odds on it anymore.
You know, these things are like historical facts, and obviously...
And archaeological facts. And many of them can be backed up by the pagan history, such as Sennacherib the Assyrian. When you go to Europe, you have his stela. It's a big piece of concrete that he keeps his records on. And it's not just him, many of the other people. These records match the biblical narrative with the archaeology that we see. Hezekiah's broad wall, in the book of Hezekiah, you can go and see the broad wall right down in here. It's exactly to what is talked about in the scripture. The Gihon Spring with Hezekiah's tunnel that you should go walk through today if you get a chance. Sennacherib speaks of all of these things.
One more question. How did the Armenian quarter has been established? I understand
That's another story. Okay, so where is Armenia at? Where is Armenia? You probably know. Right?
It's like it's very east, like
East
up northeast.
What's in Armenia that's biblical?
I don't know.
Mount Ararat. It's the mountain range of Ararat. And what's on Mount Ararat? The boat, Noah's Ark. All right, the Bible says so. They got all these people that say they have the boat up there. So, if Noah lands up there in Mount Ararat, those people know of this God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob because they're direct descendants of Noah, but they're not Jews. So what are they waiting for? They're waiting for the Jewish Messiah, because the Jewish Messiah is going to be the salvation for the whole world.
Okay.
Approximately 200 years after the death, crucifixion, resurrection, defeat of death by Yeshua, they hear of the Jewish Messiah, where he is the salvation for the world, and they come as a nation to Jerusalem.
Wow.
In the year 241, they arrived, and they kept themselves separate, and they've been here ever since. This is the Armenian quarter.
So it's 200 after Christ.
240 to 260, they arrive in
So
Jerusalem.
they've been here even though the city was under control of like Arabs,
This
under
is
the
one of the
Christians.
major mysteries. How did they keep themselves separate
Yeah.
through 1,800 years of destruction, rebuild, destruction, rebuild? They have information in important places. They don't share it with anybody. They keep themselves separate. You have to infiltrate them. They don't like the Jewish people. They don't like Jews because their theology is different than mine. I don't have a theology. I don't read the scripture. But the Armenians are extra special.
Wow.
And their story is extra special. And if you go, maybe you can befriend him and he'll talk to you.
If I'm lucky
Or
enough.
he'll throw you out, one or two.
Because to be honest, in no books, I haven't read that much, but no movies, the Armenian Quarter was ever mentioned.
They don't talk about it. They keep themselves separate. They just want to be here. Plus, don't forget the genocide. The Turks, Turkey, Ottoman Empire, the Turks, 100 years ago, they slaughtered 1.5 million of them.
Then,
You'll read about it as you walk down the road up here. They'll have the posters, but that's denied by Turkey. Erdogan is going to deny that. Till this very minute, he'll still deny it. It's a big issue. You got the Kurdistan, you got the Turks, you got the Armenians. So these millennial beefs have been happening for about 3 millennia.
yeah. So let's say you've gathered as much knowledge as you could from this guy. From the Armenian Quarter, the best way to go next is the Christian Quarter. So we will be heading back around the Tower of David through the small square and towards the church, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The most important part of the Christian Quarter is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Now it is believed that the church is standing on the same ground as Golgotha, which is the place where Jesus Christ was crucified. And there is also the tomb where Jesus Christ is believed to be buried and then later on resurrected. Once you saw enough from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I would recommend to go to the Muslim quarters. And if you had spare time and energy, you can be discovering the markets and buildings and other places in there. And from there, you should be heading towards the Jewish quarter. And again, you can be discovering quite lots of things, but I would recommend it to do it on the way back and to save some energy, because there is still lots of things to see on this day. We are actually settling for our next point, and that's the Western Wall, also known as the Wailing Wall. Honestly, I think we got lost. You could spend like literally 10-20 hours just walking around and you would probably never get out. But if we will go correctly this way, we should reach Western Wall or West Wall, which is another stop. So let's hope. Here is few interesting facts about the Western Wall. It's made completely out of limestone, and it's actually standing on the ground that is the most holiest of the grounds for Jewish people. The whole ground is actually behind that wall, in the eastern part of the city. But because the wall is standing on that holiest ground as well, it's being used for Jewish people to pray. The term of Wailing Wall has a bit of a difficult history. So back, I think, from 328 to 639 after Christ, there's been Christian Roman ruling over the Jerusalem. So most of the Jewish temples has been destroyed. And Jewish people were allowed only to a limited part of the city. And they were allowed to basically pray by this western wall. And most of the time they've been actually weeping over the burned and destroyed churches. So Christians actually gave the term Wailing Wall to it. And if you ever speak to the Jewish people, you will probably never hear them using the term Wailing Wall, because they find it quite inappropriate, and I think that's for obvious reasons. So from here we will actually leave the old city Jerusalem and we'll pass through the gate and be heading towards the city of David. Now, the city of David is one of the mistakes that I've done in our planning, because what you can find in city of David is not that much on the surface like beneath it, and I completely skipped the underground. So if you get a chance, definitely go down there and discover all the underground and the tunnels, and you will feel like you're traveling through the history over 3,000 years old. At least that's what I read. Unfortunately didn't experience. Okay. So we at least managed to scratch the surface of the city of David. And I have to say there is amazing view on the Mount of Olives. And that's quite important, because you will realize one thing. The Mount of Olives has two historical meanings. The first one, it's a burial site. It is cemetery. That's what it is in its main purpose, and was for over 3,000 years. That's why you can see all the graves. And if you were doubting yourself, is that what you see is actually a grave all over the place? Yes, you were correct. All those small stony cubes are graves, and it's being Britain, I think there is over 150,000 of them. Watching the Jewish burial sites, for me it was breathtaking. And I always wondered why they're putting the stones on the graves. So here is the tradition in a nutshell. Unlike flowers, the stones are pretty much eternal. So Jewish people believes that by placing the stones on the actual grave, first they're leaving the mark that they visited the grave. So it's something like saying, we were there, we visited you. And the stone, because it's eternal, it symbolizes the fact that Jewish people keep the memories of the people who died, who ceased. So it's like the memory is eternal as the stone. And also the Jewish word for people in translation means bond. So in a way, by placing the stone on top of the grave, they're trying to keep the bond between them alive. So hence the stones on the graves. It is also a very important part of Jesus Christ's life. Lots of things happen on that Mount of Olives, and there is about 8 olive trees that are believed to actually witness Jesus Christ, which means they are over 2,000 years old, which is quite amazing, and you will be able to see them over there. On the way to the top, you will see quite lots of temples and other interesting sites. So, quick history lesson. What you see right over there is super old. It's very ancient. It has massive religious meaning, but I have no idea what. So I hope we will manage to find out soon. I managed to fix my gap in history. So those 2 temples that you managed to see are actually tombs. They are dated at the end of the Second Temple period, and they're approximately 1,000 years old. They are not necessarily connected to the Bible, but they're still pretty impressive. So this sanctuary is actually sanctuary of Gethsemane, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. So if not, I'm really sorry. So apparently, as a translation, it means the oil press. So it's supposed to be the spot where Jesus Christ has been betrayed and arrested. So this is the peak of our journey around Jerusalem, around the old city of Jerusalem. And we managed quite well. I think from our accommodation, we've been walking all the way up here through the market, the old city of Jerusalem, all the way on top of the mountain or a hill. And I think we managed like within 5 hours, which is not bad at all. So now we have plenty of spare time, so we will be heading back towards the Old Jerusalem and maybe to discover a few more streets. So thank you guys for watching. See you later.